Hey, Daniel, how's it going?
Hey, Evan. I apologize if you see me like shivering on the podcast today. I don't know what happened, but I am freezing today. And we had like really nice weather, so who knows what's going on. How about you? How you doing?
Um, I am doing all right. If you hear dogs bark or anything, everybody, I apologize. The great flood has from January, the work has begun on the house now. So they're here today removing all the wine to take it to storage. So
Gonna have like monthly updates about your wine cellar
I
on the
know.
podcast.
We'll see how it goes. Well, and the kitchen. They found asbestos in both floors, so everything has to now come out of the house, and including us and a cat and three dogs. So see where we end up because our Airbnb just booked the last 2 weeks of the summer, so that we have. So it'll be fun. But for today's episode, we're going to talk get a little bit of a mix between patient experience and building meaningful professional relationships with our guests.
Cool. And then let's just jump right in. I'll go ahead and introduce our first guest today. Uh, a charismatic leader on and off the field, and a former University of Tennessee and with the NFL, with the New England Patriots as a professional football player, and has a kind of a unique platform or stance on just like partnering with health systems to improve patient experience and revenue cycle outcomes. I don't think we touch on that enough on the podcast. That's really fun. And then currently the head of sales at Advocatia Solutions. Welcome, Ben, to the podcast.
Hey guys, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, we thought as we did our prep that you were talking a little bit about your journey and building a partnership with providers to improve patient outcomes. And we thought maybe you could give us a little bit share with our listeners about that journey as well.
Yeah, thank you. Very passionate about the patient experience. I've spent the last kind of 10 years in revenue cycle and um, really attacked it from a couple different angles. Was with a company called Instamed that was really approaching the payment experience, creating a better patient payment experience, which we've all experienced. A lot of paper bills that are confusing. So simplifying that process was easy to kind of wrap my head around and get behind. And then, dabbled in the value-based care space. So really trying to improve outcomes and the patient experience for homebound patients. So look forward to diving into that a little bit. And currently, my company works with patients that are eligible for Medicaid or charity care or can't afford healthcare or don't have insurance to help them understand what's available to them and make that process a lot easier. So, feel really passionate about it. I think throughout my history in this space, we've really created a better patient experience with specifically hospitals and then really just healthcare in general.
I know I work in revenue cycle and I still sometimes get confused about medical bills. Like you get one from the hospital, maybe the clinic, and then the provider itself. And it's just like as a patient, it's impossible to really know what to expect. So I really appreciate that. I guess maybe even taking this further step back. I know you mentioned like starting out at Instamed and like working your way through revenue cycle and various just patient experience related work focus. Is there like any sort of like foundation to that like drive to want to be in value-based care, working on the patient experience? Like what was the impetus for that journey for you?
Yeah, I think it's a big need. I think in general, healthcare is typically, 5, 10, sometimes 20 years behind other industries. And it was really cool, especially in the payment experience, to get to kind of mimic a lot of the other industries. So I think a great example is we all travel a lot. We go to airports. 10, 15 years ago, you had to print out a ticket and, go to the desk and work with somebody to check your bag. And now, we don't even have to talk to a human when you go into an airport, which is really nice. But at the same time, they're still providing, multiple options. They still have that person to talk to for the people that want to talk to somebody. They still have the kiosks available. So I think, seeing how healthcare has really developed, especially you think about the check-in experience now, hospitals are providing a lot of mobile check-in options and kiosks, but still providing that kind of person there for all the different types of individuals. Um, so I think it's been, really cool to kind of look at that and, try to develop things that other industries are doing. So as you kind of look at, the broader consumer market, what people are into, and trying to figure out how you can apply that to healthcare.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up. I can remember coming back from Western region with some colleagues at the airport, and you and they said to us when we got to the lounge, because we had like a 2-hour window to wait because somebody didn't have pre-checks. So we all went a little earlier. But we're in the lounge just sitting there chatting, and they said, God, I hope healthcare doesn't become like the airline industry where now we just point people to a kiosk and we don't interact with them. And I think that's their fear as a patient access leader as well. How do we still maintain that human touch? Because revenue cycle is the start of a patient's journey and it's the end of a patient's journey, right? So how do we make sure that we maintain that? There's a lot of us who don't want that interaction with people, but when you need that interaction, making sure that there's somebody still there versus just pointing you to go print your own bad tag, telling you that you don't have to find your way. Still, you still need somebody to say, "Hey, this security checkpoint's closed, go to this one instead, or go drop your bag over there," but making sure that we maintain that. How have you seen organizations as they start to adapt this technology, and you've had a wonderful journey of growth. You've gone from client services at Enablecom to Instamed to when I first got to meet you at Janus Health and doing AI technology, but you've had this venture of being able to see all of these different phases of healthcare throughout the last almost decade now, of being able to see like how people have transitioned. What have you seen that your partners on the provider side have kind of adapted, modified, changed to keep going with that patient-centric care, but also trying to embrace things a little more timely?
Yeah, I think enabling staff with technology has been the kind of number one focus and been most successful. I think allowing the staff that is being pressured to do, you're continually being pressured to do more with less, to have technology to make their jobs more efficient, has been kind of the sweet spot, if you will, in this space. I think, for example, in the kind of Medicaid enrollment space today, there's no better time to enroll a patient than when you have them in person. And so that face-to-face interaction is irreplaceable, and technology will never replace that. But enabling that staff member with a tool that can automate and auto-populate applications in the background, or be able to communicate with a patient that if they don't have a document they need, that they can send them a text and receive that over the phone when they get home. So I think, really enabling staff members with technology to make the kind of mundane tasks more efficient has been, the common trend across the different industries that I've seen, that have all seen huge benefits for our clients.
And you're doing some of that work at Advocatia, right? You want to maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, exactly. So, really our founders came from the Medicaid eligibility space and have had years and years in that space. And what they found was, the in-person communication is the best and really effective for inpatient stays and those high dollar bills. But for your patient that's using the ED as a primary care physician, or your outpatient, opportunities, it doesn't make sense to have a person there financially. And so a lot of those people are missed. And they were actually helping out with a patient named Avila, and they got her enrolled in Medicaid, and she was eligible. However, she had been postponing care due to not having health care, not having health insurance, not having the ability to pay, as well as going in the ED and not having anyone to help her. And so through that experience, we developed a technology to be able for patients to self-screen, to self-enroll themselves in Medicaid, to screen themselves, understand what they're eligible for, whether it's charity care or even other SDOH programs like SNAP, WIC, or LIHEAP, to really create a community benefit, which is great for our hospital clients because they're able to not only get reimbursed for care, but also provide a community benefit out to their patients. And then when that patient returns to care, they'll be covered and can return to it, knowing they have coverage. So really providing kind of the self-service as well as a staff automated tool to be able to do those enrollments a lot more efficiently.
What have been some of the challenges you guys have faced knowing that each state has its own Medicaid requirements and platform and paperwork and submission documents and everything? How have you guys been able to face that to make it easier for the patient to understand what to pull or how to even pull maybe some of those supporting documents that they need to do?
Yeah, in my experience at EnableComp too, I learned a lot of the difference between kind of companies that can do it all and niche companies. And, we are very much a niche, and that really plays to our advantage with complexity. So as states change rules and, the different criteria for qualifying for Medicaid changes, it's really important to have a partner or at least a team that's specifically focused on that. So you're not missing out on, and you're able to continually update the different state regulations. So for example, some states are now requiring that every patient be screened, preferably on the front end for charity care or any other programs prior to being sent to collections. And so we have that ability. So we're really solving that need that the state's requiring for a lot of our clients. And then another example is some states require an actual signature and don't accept a signature over the phone, a kind of telephonic signature. So we're able to solve that too because we've built in a mobile signature technology, so we're able to receive that over the phone. So I think as states develop new rules, we've kind of developed our product too to meet those and continually staying up to date with the changes and expansion and PHE unwinding and all the different factors going into it. Having a team that's been in Medicaid eligibility for over 100 years experience on our team has really been helpful to know what's happened in the past, but also continually focus on the changes that are coming and be up to date with that.
I know you mentioned you work in a niche space and that there's some benefits to that. Do you see the path forward for Advocatia to branch out or expand the new things? Like, is there anything exciting on the horizon that y'all are focused on or wanting to get plugged into?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities for a group like us. I think there's we do want to continually be focused on this kind of Medicaid space. I think there's definitely opportunities to expand into Medicare. I think there's a lot of opportunities to work better with state organizations, to plug directly into them to speed up the application and approval process for patients that are applying to Medicaid. I think there's a lot of opportunities with payers to provide a more community benefit and work better with their providers. Value-based care is an additional opportunity for us as these groups are getting a per patient or per member per month fee, being able to identify patients that are dual eligible, both for Medicare and Medicaid, or get those patients that aren't enrolled in Medicaid enrolled and attributed to that group so that they can take better care of that patient. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to expand in kind of the niche we're in, but also expand into Medicare and other kind of enrollments that really provide a benefit to patients that are predominantly underserved and really live a very complex life, and hopefully making this process a little bit more simple, because a lot of things in their lives are not.
Hey, Ben, are you guys looking into anything associated with, like I'll just pick on the state of Oregon. We have, you enroll in traditional Medicaid first for Oregon, and then you end up getting moved over to a managed plan and they automatically move you to one of those based off what county and what population area you're in. Are you guys helping partner to then go back and see, okay, now you're enrolled and now you've been moved from traditional over into a managed program, and helping with that notification of the patient? Or once they're enrolled, are you guys just kind of stopping and now allowing the state to take over in that portion of the communication?
Yeah, great question. I think that's one of the benefits, I think, of our platform is we're able to track where patients are in the process. If they get moved, when is their, when do they need to, when is redetermination? When do they need to re-enroll? If they're on charity care, when does that expire? When should I reach back out to a patient? Let's set up an auto outreach to make sure they're continually getting covered, and that they don't fall off because of, really just an inability to track that with the state. So we kind of become that tool of reporting and not only helping people get enrolled, but stay enrolled, and understand what their coverage options are. So yeah, definitely seeing a lot of advantages to that.
That's great that, being able to, as a patient, be able to go back into your portal potentially and see like, oh, okay, I now need to do this or the next step in that component. Before we head out to break, any last questions or topics you guys want to talk about?
I have a question, and this is more just because we have a lot of, or we think we have a lot of early career son on our podcast as listeners, and I'm assuming they know what Medicare and Medicaid are, but value-based care is something that might be a little bit unique for some of our listeners. You all want to take a stab at explaining what that is?
Yeah, I'll give a first stab. I think a lot of different definitions. I think it's, as you look at the different areas it's applied to, but when you look at the value-based care industry for the new companies you're hearing, and kind of the space I'm familiar with, your kind of Navi Health, your Care Bridges, those type of companies, what they're really doing is providing care really on behalf of the payer for an individual. So they're really getting reimbursed based off of the care they're providing. And they're providing a supplemental, I guess, care navigator is what a lot of the groups are calling it, to be able to manage that person a little bit tighter than maybe a plan has the capabilities to. So I guess really in my experience, it's aligning a better care model that can more closely monitor care, especially for patients with chronic or more severe illness that need a lot of attention.
And I think, Daniel, it expands then from that to then how does the provider actually get reimbursed by hitting certain quality metrics and measurements and all of that as well, not just as a healthcare organization, but we're also starting to see some legislation start to spark around the actual physicians and mid-level practitioners, and where are they going to fall into those components of meeting the patient need, and looking at, are they going with the cheaper option for the patient versus the most expensive option, and are they getting the right outcomes, or are they even following the national best practice standards as those start to develop, and is the insurer providing that same approval for that practice versus doing a more invasive process and procedure. So I think it's all encompassing, but the term is used loosely in both realms for our earlier careerists. All right, well, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. And we're back.
believe hospitals are the cause of affordability issues, when in reality, major healthcare insurers are running millions behind in payments to hospitals and physicians. This results in increased costs to patients and delay in patient care. Hospitals alone are unable to address these poor care performance metrics. There are no unbiased industry standards or measurements into the hospital insight into what is truly happening to their peers in healthcare. Until now. Vitality Payer Scorecard, a national de-identified, normalized database of hospital claims and remittances, allows you to look at others to help expose the negative patterns of payer behavior. The more you know about how a payer operates in your state and throughout the nation, the better position you will be to hold them accountable. Individually, hospitals are unable to influence change, but together, we can revolutionize an industry. Join us today by going to payerscorecard.com.
There are thousands of medical offices and facilities across America, each navigating through changing regulations and reimbursement models while striving for positive patient experiences and outcomes. A common element in each of these facilities is patient access, the front line of both the revenue cycle and the patient experience. Though diverse in facility size and geography, patient access professionals unite around a common purpose: enhancing the overall patient experience to increase patient satisfaction and outcomes. Through it all, one organization is there to educate, connect, inform, and pave the way toward the future of patient access. The National Association of Healthcare Access Management recognizes the changing role of patient access professionals and their increased importance.
And we're back.
All right, so we're going to jump into the meat and potatoes of today's conversation and the debate. And I think we had this titled New Way of Leadership. So we're going to be talking about a couple different things in leadership and healthcare and get Ben's thoughts on all that. And again, yeah, just hopefully this is interesting for you all. Evan, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, Ben, during the prep call, you shared a ton about your past during college and how, and even the NFL, and how like coaches took different approaches in building team dynamic and environment. And, you know, we were inspired leaving it. So we thought for our listeners, you know, let you inspire them as well and get some of those key takeaways from your time in college and the NFL and what did you adapt as now as a leader?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm very passionate about leadership. It's something that I've you know, as a kid, I was a really shy individual, and it's funny watching my kids grow up and be some of them are really shy, and one of them is not. But I really developed into a leader really in college, and you know, for a quick background, I've got a strong history at the University of Tennessee. I played football there, but also my brother played there during the kind of heyday of Tennessee when we had Peyton Manning and won a national championship. And prior to that, our grandfather also played at Tennessee and was a captain of a undefeated, unscored on team, which is pretty unheard of in 1939. So pretty cool there. But I, you know, got to Tennessee expecting all this national championship and happened to you know, have a quite different experience. I had, you know, 3 coaches in 5 years, and you know, really had to draw back to my love for Tennessee to stay. I think if transfer portal and NIL were around, I may not have it, but was really committed to Tennessee and really committed to learning lessons and tried to take the best from each coach that I played under. I think a couple things that stood out was, you know, Coach Fulmer at Tennessee won a national championship, was an amazing coach. And what, you know, I really remember from him and respected was his ability to create a culture. And I think that's really difficult. And the one thing that stood out around him on how he did that is he embraced tradition. I think a lot of times when we hear tradition, we think that is kind of boring, old school things. But with him, he really taught us like, hey, that power T on your helmet, on your jersey, that doesn't represent just you. That doesn't represent just this team. That represents every single person that's worn that tee, that's had blood, sweat, and tears in that uniform. And you're representing every single one of those when you step onto that field. And that created a culture of complete buy-in. And I think that's so applicable today as you think about your organizations and creating a culture that, has a tradition around it and having people understand the history. And that really carried through to New England too. Bill Belichick was really strong, really passionate about having all the rookies understand where the Patriots had been, that they weren't always this Super Bowl team that was in Super Bowl contention every year, that they had fought, and it has been a long road to get there, and that every time you wore that logo on your helmet, that you were representing them. A couple other people that in stories that come to mind, played 1 year under Lane Kiffin, who now is the head coach at Ole Miss, and you might recognize him more from his Twitter rants than coaching, but he was an incredible leader when it came to energy and passion. He was able to inspire a team. The first day he got on campus, he had the entire team standing up, listening to drums. One of the coaches ripped their shirt off. We were all screaming. We thought there was no one that was ever going to beat us. And he really taught me that energy and passion is very contagious. And if you can be passionate about what you're doing and really put in the effort, that's going to be contagious, and everyone's going to see that around you. And and then he left for his dream job at USC, and I had a coach named Derek Dooley who had struggled on the field as a coach, but had some really great leadership qualities. Brought in a acronym that I use every day. I'm actually using in a meeting later today with our team, called RPCI, which is Relentless Pursuit of Continuous Improvement. And I try to live by that every day, is how can I get better? That meeting went great. How can it be better? We did this process really well, but how can it be better? Continually looking to improve those processes. And that's really kind of served me. And I've tried to ingrain that in my heart, everything I do. And learning from Bill too. I think with the Patriots, there was a lot of lessons. I think the one thing I'd take from him is probably dependability. He didn't really care how fast you could run a 40, how high you could jump. You've seen it from the different draft picks he had in the history. But really what he cared about is that in the first quarter that you're going to run that route 5 yards, and in the fourth quarter and overtime, you're still going to run it right at 5 yards and be in that place. And you're going to be there and be dependable when the team needs you most. And so thinking about that as you apply it to your team too, I think there's a lot of aspects of that which can apply to everyone's business. But those are just some things from the coaches that I played for, and obviously I'm really passionate about that, and like to apply that to everything we're doing at my company as well.
I know you mentioned that or in the first segment of today's podcast, that sometimes healthcare can be like 15 to 20 years in the past a little bit in the airport analogy. And just thinking about coming into healthcare, being a leader in healthcare, and in some ways it not being at the cutting edge all the time, and you got to inspire people. Like, what challenges have you run into, or how have you formed a team to take that energy and that leadership and that culture and make progress in what you're doing?
Yeah, great question. I think the best example of that in my football experience was, it was my first day in New England, and I was had just gotten my cleats and was lacing up my cleats on the turf, and I got a tap on the shoulder. And I stood up and turned around, and it was Tom Brady. And Tom is really tall. If you don't know, he's like 6'6". So I kind of looked up, and I'm like, "Oh man, hey!" And he's like, "Hey, I'm Tom Brady. Nice to meet you." And I was like, well, of course I know who you are. And he was like, you're that fullback, right? Bartholomew. And I was like, yeah, like, wow, you know who I am. And he looked at me and he said, we're going to need you to win a Super Bowl this year. And I was like, whoa, like I'm lucky to be here. I'm probably not going to make the team. Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, we're going to need you just like we're going to need Edelman and Gronk and the coaches over there and that janitor over there and the guy that does our laundry. We need everyone here focused on that one goal to win a Super Bowl. And from that moment, I was like, man, that's what's different about this place. They have that one goal that everyone's striving for. And so I think, trying to apply that now in business, in healthcare, it is hard because companies are behind. But I think if you can figure out that why and what you're doing and have everyone focused on that one vision, that one mission, um, we can really rally around that. And so, for everyone, some people are a little bit more removed than others, but everyone in this space is revolved around helping people and helping patients. And whether it's, making sure the hospitals, keep their bottom line so they can stay in business, or you're directly touching a patient like I am today, creating that relationship to the patient, I think is the biggest way to inspire people and, get them excited about what they're doing and have them feel passionate about, what they're doing as well.
How, as we were prepping, you talked a lot about going from, a in-person environment with leadership to going almost completely remote environment. What are some of the techniques and things that you have been implementing in kind of this hybrid or fully remote world to do that inspiration of inspiring your team and others in leadership?
Yeah, I think all the standard tips and tricks are great, requiring you to have your camera on. It's a little thing, but it works. People really connect better. We have started to do. Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
My internet jumped for a second. There we go.
Yeah.
We have started to do in-person leadership meetings and having everyone come together and be able to communicate ideas in person has been really helpful. It doesn't have to be, every day. You don't have to go in the office every day, but to have quarterly on-sites has been really impactful for us, or getting together at conferences. Evan, that's how we've been able to create a relationship, and the value of different organizations like HFMA and others. That in-person connection where you're building relationships has been, really, really important. And I think, for remote teams, it's really easy to forget about recognition. Everyone craves recognition, especially salespeople like myself. But people crave recognition. So remembering to include that, because when you're not in person, you can't go by someone's office and say, hey, nice job on that presentation, or hey, way to go with that report. So creating ways to do recognition, we're doing a every week when we do our kind of sales call, I provide a recognition award based off our values. So we're about to give a value award. I think a great way to get started with that is take your company values, designate someone to do the first award, give an award to a person for exonerating the values. That helps not only push your company values to the forefront, but also recognizes that person. And then the next week, that person that got the award, it's going to be their job to give the next award and continue to do that. So I know some companies have implemented that. I can't say enough how great that's been for companies I've been at. Just creating little recognition pieces. You don't have to buy a gift card or spend a lot of money on it, but verbally recognizing someone in front of their peers is, a great way to create just a great culture and be a good leader too from a remote environment.
Well, and it makes you learn about your peer, right? Like if you're in this weird hybrid world or fully remote world, you don't always get to build those meaningful relationships. But if you're having to pass an award along and you say you can't, it can't go to somebody who's already won it, right? That type of deal. It forces you to seek out new relationships with people as well. I think that's an awesome idea.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks. It's been really good.
Ben, I'm curious, what do you do to pursue your own like leadership drive and growth? Like we're talking about like a lot of team building, like leading others, but what do you do to become a better leader? If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, RPCI, relentless pursuit of continuous improvement. I look at it every day. I think I'm always looking for resources. So podcasts like this one. Where can I find information not only on, getting better and sharpening my mind on the tools that I need for my job, but also leadership. I think uh, a great resource for that is a local guy in Nashville, Dave Ramsey, does a lot of financial things. He has a podcast called Entree Leadership that I listen to regularly, where they bring on business leaders to talk about how they're leading in their business, and I think learning from others. So I have quite a few mentors here in Nashville as well that I try to get together with and learn from them, learn from people that have done it before that you respect, and say, hey, what are you doing for remote with your remote team? How are you inspiring people? What are different ways that you're creating leadership tracks for your new hires? Um, a great example that I've tried to apply to is, one of my coaches, he had captains of the team, but he also had what he called a unity council, and that was the captains of the team and the seniors. However, he also brought in players that were younger, that were freshmen, that he knew one day would be leaders, and brought them into the meetings. And they got to hear what the captains and the leaders, the seniors on the team were saying, how they were approaching issues, how they were inspiring the team. And they didn't have a ton of say at the table, but they got to see it and start to get used to what leadership is like. And so I've tried to apply that with our teams is, how do you take someone that's maybe a new hire but has a lot of leadership potential and let them sit in on the board meetings, let them sit in on the larger, executive meetings. They don't have to contribute yet, but understand how things are handled, how decisions are made. I think that's a great way to develop young leaders. And other than that, reading books, going to different HFMAs, and I challenge our team, hey, let's, once a month, let's get together, let's bring in podcasts and books that we can all read together and try to sharpen our skills, because the moment you stop learning, other people are going to pass you up, and you can really only bring people as deep as you are in a subject. So if you're not very deep in leadership or your expertise, you can only bring people so far, and then if they pass you up, they're either going to leave or they're going to take your job. And so I don't want anybody to take my job or leave me, so I'm going to continue to try to grow and learn how I can do things better.
I think one of the themes Daniel and I continue to see is this component of mentorship and really aligning yourself with good mentors. And going back to Daniel in our last segment where he was talking about early careerists or new to the careerists, and sorry, the dog is now whining if you guys hear him in the background. But in that regards, how did you approach somebody to become your mentor or ask somebody to be your mentor? I think that's always a struggle, right? Like if I'm shy and in a little bit of a shell, how do I branch out to say, hey, Ben, I really want to learn from you and I want to grow from you. Like, how have you gone about developing getting a mentor?
Yeah, I'm very blessed to have a father that started a law firm in Nashville and was very connected into the Nashville market. And so he had a lot of business connections and did a lot of business with different incredible leaders and entrepreneurs and successful businessmen in town. So I started with them because if they were friends with my dad, they were likely, it had a lot of the attributes that I sought after as well. And I also have a much older brother that I like to remind him a lot how much older he is. But my brother Bo he's a CEO of a company called Evidence Care, and he had a lot of great mentors, and he's also kind of he's 16 years older, so a lot of his friends and associates have kind of been great mentors to me as well. So I was blessed with family that connected me with a lot of those. I think the ones I've sought out individually, I think the best way to do that is finding someone that you want to be to be your mentor or you really look up to and asking how you can help them. Figure out a way you could bring value to them. Um, so it's not just them just pouring into you. So if you can figure out, hey, this person is selling into this group and they really need to meet someone that making an introduction or providing a resource or an invite to an event that they might not know about. Providing some type of value to somebody, I think is a great way to start and say, hey, I wanted to give this to you. I love to just get coffee and hear about your story. I'm trying to figure out my life and would love to bounce ideas off you. But being able to give back something, it doesn't have to be monetary, but some type of education. And honestly, when I've met with people and early careerists, I've learned that really sharpens me. And so what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of times the mentee can help the mentor a whole lot as well. And so being able to create those relationships can really grow both sides.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's about a long-term partnership, right? You become more than just a mentee and mentor. You flip-flop it, and at times you really become that colleague and that professional guidance in the long run. Well, let's take another short break and we will be right back, everyone.
Claim Capital is a team of ex-Epic staff focused on preventing denials. Instead of showing what was denied, which is the standard for other solutions available today, Claim Capital pinpoints why claims are denied. By training machine learning models on an organization's claim and remittance data, Claim Capital can identify the causes of denials and recommend changes in EHR build or workflows to prevent them from happening in the future. With a completely HIPAA-compliant infrastructure, no software implementations, and a zero-risk pricing structure, organizations can quickly and safely recover lost revenue.
Welcome to Advocatia, where we make enrollments easy. Our technology is built to superpower your team, providing a more consumer-friendly approach to enrollments into programs like Medicaid, charity care, and SDOH programs. Our tool integrates with your system to pull over data that auto-populates in the background, allows for screening for multiple programs, automated outreach campaigns, self-service tools, and e-signature and document capture. In the background, we're auto-populating forms, making your life easier. If you'd like to learn more, please reach out to Ben Bartholomew. Thank you.
And we're back.
All right, so let's jump into the Wilshire Lab. We just have a couple questions. We asked all our guests just to give folks some context of why folks work in healthcare and like what advice you might have for careers, so a little bit more personal. But Ben, just wanted to get your story. I know we talked a lot about your story, but what was about healthcare that's like, I want to work in this industry versus something else?
Yeah, it's I often get asked this just due to the nature of playing in the NFL. How did you get into revenue cycle? Um, so when I stopped playing football, I worked, one of my brothers owns a lot of gyms called D1 Sports. And so I was working in the gym industry with him, still training, kind of hoping to play football again. And once I realized that opportunity was closed, being in Nashville, um, there's really only two main industries in Nashville. It's country music and healthcare. And I like to think I'm very talented with the air guitar and a karaoke mic, but I have no musical talents. So healthcare was kind of my one option. Um, I got connected with a guy named Jim Lackey, and he had just grown the company Passport Health and sold that to Experian, and had bought Enable Comp and was looking to grow and do a similar, have a similar growth pattern. And man, that sounded exciting to me. And I got introduced to their chief revenue officer, who was a former baseball player, loved sports, and loved athletes, and we just clicked. We call our sales pipeline meetings red zone. I still call it that today. We talk about getting things over the end zone. And, he really taught me that, sports is a lot like sales. It's a lot of, hearing people tell no, but, building that relationship and continually, you know, working through a relationship map to find the right person and help them with the best value. And so that got me into sales, and it just happened to be in revenue cycle and healthcare. And once I figured out, man, this is really helping patients and helping lives, I kind of fell in love with it. And all the opportunity in Nashville, really based from the Frist family and HCA, and all the different opportunities that have come in Nashville from that, has really kept me in it, and I look forward to staying in it for my career.
All right, next question for you. What advice would you offer to our listeners that are maybe early careerists, and when we say early, we don't always mean like fresh out of college or high school type. It could be somebody, it's their second career or third career, but it's within the revenue cycle space or IT healthcare space.
Yeah, I think I think two things. I think as you're looking at companies, one, making sure you really believe in what the company's doing and the product, and you know that it's something that you're passionate about, and you're not just chasing money because it's a higher salary. And I think looking at the leadership is a real part of that, because as we've probably all experienced, the leadership at a company really reflects on the entire company. And so if you don't align with the leadership, and that's really creating a lot of friction, that's going to rub and wear down on you over time. But opposite, if you really believe in the leadership, and maybe it's a role you're not getting paid the way you should, but you really believe in it, you're going to work harder and believe in that more. I think the other advice I would look at, and something I got trying to figure out my roles over time, was, people always ask, hey, well, what do you want to do? And you're like, well, I don't know. Like, I'm still figuring that out. And so I think a great way to figure out what you want to do is figuring out what you don't want to do. And so that was great advice for me, because, coming out of college, a lot of athletes get into medical device sales. And they said, and so I started talking to some medical device folks, and it sounded so awesome. It's really great money, great, really cool. You're fixing people's knees and shoulders. But I learned that you spend 90% of your day in an operations room and you're watching people get cut open. And that was not for me. I did not want to do that. So I learned quickly what I didn't want to do. And that really helped me figure out what I want to do. So I think as you're looking at different opportunities and different industries, spaces in healthcare, figuring out what you don't want to do, I think is just as important as figuring out what you want to do.
That resonates a lot with me. Evan and I would get different gigs from time to time, and I have found that some gigs I don't like as much as other ones, like as far as placements, and it gives you a little hint of what you want to do and what you don't want to do. For sure. Well, thanks, Ben, for joining us on the podcast today. I really appreciate your talking about patient experience and that your passion there and leadership and different perspective that I think we've had on the podcast so far. For folks who want to connect with you, reach out to you, maybe even meet you in person, what's the best way to connect?
Yeah, LinkedIn, super easy. Ben Bartholomew. Also, you can follow me on Instagram, Ben Bartholomew 39. And feel free to contact me over email, bbartholomew@advocatia.io. Happy to get together with anybody, provide any of the resources too that I mentioned today.
Thanks again, Ben, for joining us. It was awesome. I'm sure we'll get you back on in a future season as well. And that's it for us today, everybody. And we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.